Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Climate Marketing Workshop at West LA City College, California Center for Climate Change Education. Tonight, we're going to be joined by Angel Anderson, who's going to give us a guest workshop. She's a UX designer, a leader dedicated to crafting inclusive and sustainable digital experiences with a career spanning roles at companies like Meta, Nike, and American Express, as well as founding a clear beauty tech startup. Angel now focuses on bridging climate technology and government through human-centered design. She's also an advocate for diversity in tech and a frequent speaker at events like UX London and Interaction Week. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to just pass it over to you.
All right, my pleasure. First things first, I'm going to share my screen. Let me know when you see what I see. Yes, okay, wonderful. And I'm going to go full screen. Okay, hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today and joining us in class. I know you've had a lot of back-to-back guest lectures, and a lot of times people start out talking about who they are and why you should listen to them, but I'm going to do something a little different. I want to start with a story from 100 years ago. I want you to picture about 100 years ago, a crowded trolley in the middle of the city, and it's sleeting rain outside, cold, freezing rain. And all of the passengers who are on this trolley car 100 years ago are having a very spirited discussion because the rain is pouring down and the poor trolley driver has to get out every 5 minutes to wipe the freezing, sleeting rain off of the window pane. It's really dangerous outside because a new thing called an automobile has just been invented. And the drivers of those automobiles are also having to do the same thing. It's really dangerous to avoid collisions. They're having to hop out and wipe the water off their window screen. And so the passengers on this trolley get into a really spirited discussion about this problem. And they're watching the poor driver get soaking wet as he goes in and out. And one of them says, we should just have all vehicles should just have like a hole in the door so that they can stick their arms out and wipe that off. And that way we don't have to sit here waiting and getting stuck while they stop and start a million times. The driver can stay nice and dry. It's a win-win. And if they had stuck with that problem statement, it would have meant a very, very different automobile design than the one that we have today. It would all of our cars would have a hole in the door. And if they had stuck with that problem statement, it would also have meant that they had to test how big should the holes be? Should the hole have a cover? Should the hole be different sizes for different kinds of drivers? Where exactly should the hole be? And then they're going to have to test that hole to make sure that drivers can actually reach the front of the window. It would have completely changed the path that all the car designers went on if they'd stuck with that initial problem statement. And it sounded like a worthy problem statement. Drivers need a hole in the door so they can clear off the rain and anything else that's in their view. The problem with that problem statement, though, is it's actually a solution that's masquerading as a problem. They've actually baked in their idea of what the answer is, which is a hole in the door. Unfortunately, there was a woman on that train, a woman named Mary Anderson, no relation to me. And Mary decided to sit with this problem and really get deep into what was the real issue. The real issue wasn't that vehicles needed a hole. The real issue was that drivers couldn't see when it was raining. Now, when you frame it that way, it sounds like the same thing almost, but it's a very, very subtle change. Now we're talking about drivers who can't see when it's raining. So we know who, we know the context, we know the problem. And there's nothing in there about a solution. So it's a very different way of framing the problem. And when you frame it that way, drivers can't see when it rains, suddenly you can open up a whole world of potential solutions. Maybe we put an umbrella on top of the car. Maybe we put metal coils into the car windows or the trolley car windows. And when the water hits those trolley car windows, it just evaporates away. There is no water or snow stuck to the window because of the coils make the glass nice and hot. Or maybe we come up with this weird mechanical newfangled thing that will just wipe the water away. And that is the story of how Mary Anderson invented windshield wipers and got a patent on it. She was actually one of the first patent holders to ever think of and design a solution for wiping rain and snow off of windows. She got that patent in 1903, Mary Anderson, one of our first inventors. But she did that because she thought about the problem and got really deep into the problem before jumping into a solution, which is punching a hole in the door. So I want you to think about that story as we move through the rest of today, because I feel like it's a really good illustration of a bad problem statement and a good problem statement, and the importance of really refining your problem statement before you do anything else as a designer. Because if they had done that whole thing, it would have been, well, a whole lot of work. I want to give you another example. 15 years ago here in LA, Los Angeles launched this really beautiful recycling app. And it had, you know, all the green leaves and the cheerful icons, and the slogan was like, make LA greener. But after 6 months, nobody was using it. And the data showed that recycling was actually going down. So what happened? Well, it turns out that the real problem wasn't that people didn't want to recycle. The real problem was that they didn't know what was recyclable in the first place. And there was all this confusion about sorting. So there was sorting confusion. There was no access to the right bins once you knew what was what. And so the app was solving basically a marketing problem, but the real issue was infrastructure and education. So tons and tons of beautiful design and a lot of money absolutely wasted. And that is the power of problem definition. If you don't get the problem right, your solution, no matter how beautiful, it's not going to matter at all. And I believe that everybody here, note takers included, is here because they want to become badass designers. But here's the truth. Design isn't just about making things look good or evoking an emotion. That's art. If you want to just express yourself or bring out emotions in people, become an artist. Design is different than art because design identifies and solves a problem. And when we're working with climate, the stakes are even higher than other forms of design that you could pursue. If you're designing the wrong thing, you're not just wasting time, you're also wasting a chance to really matter and make an impact. You're wasting a chance to make a difference and slow climate change. And later is too late. So it's really important to get it right when you're working in climate design. On Tuesday of this week, I guess the day before yesterday, Rachel Celanese talked to you guys about core skills like empathy and listening and collaboration. All of those skills really get flexed when you start working on problem identification and problem articulation. It's really about slowing down and going deeper, asking a lot of really annoying questions, and building alignment amongst your team. And so before we go off and design beautiful posters or clever tools or even slick products, we just have to stop and ask, what exactly is the core problem, the real problem that we're trying to solve? And today, we're going to practice sharpening your skills so that you can cut straight to the heart of any problem and unleash design that really actually matters. So before we move on, has anybody here, just raise a hand or maybe pop something in the chat, or actually, it's hard for me to see the chat when I'm presenting. So if you could come off mute, has anyone ever crafted a problem statement or worked off of a problem statement to drive their design work? Anybody at all, especially the virtual people. Has anybody ever worked from a problem statement? Is this a new concept? If this is a new concept, I'm gonna take your silence as this is a new concept. Problem statements are new to you. Okay. Well, let's talk about what the key elements are of a problem statement. Can anybody guess what the key elements might be? Maybe like come off of mute and say what you think a really well-crafted problem statement might include. Anybody? Okay. Well, it won't come as a big surprise, but the most critical element is who are we designing for? If we're talking about human-centered design, the most important thing to include in your problem statement is who is this person? If you just say the user, that doesn't tell me anything about who I need to make this for and how I need to appeal to them. If you tell me children under 10, totally changes the way I'm going to design this. If you tell me this is for elderly Russian people who live in West Hollywood, I might have to change it entirely from how I was going to design it for children. So it's really important to know who is the person or group of people that you're designing for. So the user, that's number one, who. The next is getting into the what. And this is where it gets really tricky because a lot of people start talking about what and they accidentally get into solutioning. They talk about the solution, their idea for a solution, and they get so excited about their idea for a solution, like the hole in the door, that they don't actually talk about what the problem is. So when a person comes to you with a problem statement and they give you something that's actually a solution masquerading as a problem, you can get deeper with them by asking, okay, and how would that solution help this person? Or who would that solution help? Tell me what is the desired outcome if we do this solution that you're asking for? So asking deep questions like why a million times to get to the heart of what the real problem is really a useful skill. And to do it in a way that doesn't piss everybody off and make them annoyed with you, that's where all of your soft skills are really going to come into play. And then it's important to ask, why does this matter? Why does this matter to that person? Why does this matter to the business? Sometimes the impact can be more global. Like if I start composting, for example, that matters on a lot of different levels. One, it keeps my trash from getting filled too soon before it gets picked up. Two, it allows me to have more nutrient-rich soil so I can grow fruits and veggies and flowers in my own garden. And then there's also a global impact. If I keep my food out of landfill, suddenly I'm not contributing to the greenhouse gases of my food putrefying in a landfill. So the impact can be to that group of people. It can be to the business that you're working for. It can be to the world in general, or all of the above. And very important, the problem statement doesn't include a solution. So those are the three ingredients: the who, what, why, plus a little bonus: don't include a solution. Seems pretty simple. And yet throughout your life, you're going to come across a lot of really bad problem statements that people are going to come to you with, especially if you end up working at an agency designing for large scale brands, because the CEO is going to come up with an idea and say, we need a website to blah, blah, blah. Okay, who's this website for? What problem does it solve for them? Why would that matter? You've got to ask those questions to really unpack what's in the CEO's mind. And then you've got to kick the tires. Are those things actually true? Or are they his assumptions? So let's look at a couple examples. Here's an example number one. We need a website to teach people to compost. What's wrong with that problem statement? Why is that bad? Well, it's bad because I don't know who we is. Who's we? Me? I don't need that website. I already know how to compost. To teach people how to compost. Okay, so maybe it's people who don't know how to compost. Well, if they're not composting, why are they going to go to a website to learn? Do they care about composting? I don't know. So this is a better statement. Urban apartment dwellers want to compost, but their food waste, they want to compost their food waste, but they lack convenient and affordable ways to do it, leading to frustration and increased landfill waste. So now I know the who, urban apartment dwellers. I also know the problem. They want to compost, but they don't have convenient and affordable ways to do it. And I also know the impact. It leads to frustration and increased landfill. That's impact for the person and it's impact to the planet. And notice there's nothing in here about a website or any app or any other solution. Because getting to the problem statement lets me think, well, is an app actually really the right method to intercept these urban apartment dwellers? If they lack convenient and affordable ways to do it, how is a website going to help them with that? Maybe we need to actually lobby the city to put green bins in all of these apartments and change the design of a trash chute. So I can control when it goes down the trash chute, you know, this load needs to go into the blue bin. It completely changes the possibility of solutions that you might try to create. Any questions about this one? Okay, I'm going to go on to example number 2. We need a new climate change awareness website. Again, who's we? And why do we need this website? A better version is with the who, what, and why. Who's the who? High school students. High school students are the who. And what is the problem they're having? These high school students feel overwhelmed and they need these hopeful actions. And the impact is we want them to feel empowered rather than paralyzed. So again, the who, what, and why. Any questions about this one before we move on? And again, no mention of technology, no mention of a solution in any of these. But we are making some assumptions. We're making an assumption. Oh, yeah. Hi, Anita. What's your question?
So for this class, is it a continuation of what you guys had already laid? Was it like a foundation of continue? I mean, this is my first class.
Oh, Casey, do you want to take the wheel?
No.
Casey, you're muted.
Thank you. The workshop series has different speakers who are working in the climate marketing field. I don't want to say industry, but different people every night. And tonight we have Angel Anderson, who's talking about user experience design.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Sorry for interrupting. I just
That's
wanted.
okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's great. It's a great night to join.
Yeah, because truthfully, this notion of crafting problem statements, it's really helpful for designers, but it's also helpful in almost any work environment. Because in any work environment, you might be charged with solving a problem. And you might be given the problem that's actually not the real problem to solve. So this exercise of crafting a really solid, sharp problem statement can help you no matter what industry you're in. It's particularly important for designers and teams that are working in collaboration, but it can help you no matter what job you're in at any role. If you're working in any realm where you're asked to be solving problems, this can be helpful, this reframing of the problem. Is there anything that jumps out at you between like the good and the bad on this one? Are there any other assumptions being made? For example, there's still a couple of assumptions being made in the better problem example. Can anybody spot what those assumptions might be? We're stating that we believe students feel overwhelmed and hopeless about climate change. That might be true, but we need to know for sure before we actually design something to overcome that. So we would go and do research. That's another useful thing about a problem statement. It kind of helps you understand what are your blind spots. If you look at your problem statement and go, I can't tell you with certainty that every single word of this is true, that guides the user research that you're going to do, the market research that you're going to do, because you need to know that answer before you go off and spend however many millions of dollars making a solution that overcomes this feeling of overwhelm. If they don't actually have the feeling of overwhelm, you really need to know that. So watch out for assumptions when you recraft your problem statement. Don't just make it up. Or if you are making it up, go out and validate those assumptions after the fact.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Is it possible to use the sort of the methodology of that you're presenting about finding the problem statement on like a problem that's already been started?
Yes.
You know, like reverse engineer with this sort of mindset.
Yes. Yes. So you can do that. Like, you know, if you have something like a project that's already underway, but you're feeling like, gosh, I'm nervous that this is going to miss the mark. I would recraft the problem statement to include the who, what, why, and then take that to the project owner or manager and say, do you feel like this is actually what we're trying to do? This will help you. If nothing else, it'll help you be aligned better with the team. And if they say, yes, that is exactly what we're trying to do, then you say, okay, do we know that this assumption right here is true, that students feel overwhelmed? What data do we have on this? What research do we do? What study are we basing this assumption on? And it can be illuminating for you to get aligned with the team. And it can also be illuminating for the project owner, because suddenly they're going to go, oh, wait, gosh, I didn't actually validate this. And I'm spending $500,000 on a website to overcome this frustration and overwhelm. And I don't actually know if they have it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making an assumption. So so the answer is yes. You also have to prepare a little bit for some people to get frustrated. Some people don't like when you poke holes in the plan that they already have in their heads, especially if they've already spent a lot of money on it. So just ask it in a gentle way. I'm going to look at one more example. Here's a third and final example of a problem statement. Design a reusable water bottle that people want to buy. Who are these people? We don't know. I don't know who people, what water bottles people want to design, want to buy, but I can guess a little bit better if I know that we're talking about young commuters. Young commuters forget bulky reusable bottles, causing guilt and waste. Plastic waste. Oh, another question, Casey. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Sure.
There was a response to one of your slides in the chat
Okay.
that we overlooked. If
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to take a look at it because I think it relates to what we're talking about.
Can you just read it out? It's hard to
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It says, assumptions maybe the high schoolers don't really care at all. This is such an interesting point. I think a lot of people are under pressure to deliver quick results, not just for themselves, but often because their managers expect it too. In that context, it makes sense that people might hesitate to dive deeply into research, especially when the longevity of a project isn't guaranteed. I completely agree with your perspective, and at the same time, I can understand why people might look for shortcuts or avoid getting too bogged down in the details.
Yeah. I think one of the premier skills of my career has been knowing when to go deep and really, kick the tires and double check and verify all the assumptions, and knowing when to, all right, we're going to make an assumption that XYZ is true and design accordingly. I think in the instances where you do decide to move forward on a hunch or a guess or an assumption, especially if it's a hunch or a guess that like is coming from the top, it's really important to highlight that and just say, this is a hypothesis that we have as a company that XYZ is true. And we're basing our work on this hypothesis. That way, using the word hypothesis is a way to not ruffle feathers, because if you use the word guess, people get offended. But a lot of design is done on people's guesses. But it's important to highlight those things that we don't know for certain as hypotheses or assumptions. Back to this problem. Did I answer that question okay? Thumbs up, thumbs down? We can talk more about that in Q&A. Oh, hi, Anita. Yes.
Yeah, so can you also like be in a place where you ask the users like if they had a reusable bottle, like what were the challenges they have?
Yes.
Would that prompt you to think like, oh, there is a problem here with what is already in the market, but this is how we can it look differently?
Yes, you're touching on something that is really important, which is primary direct user input. Now that I know that we're going after young commuters, let's say I don't have any data at all, I might just go down to, a train platform one day and say, hey, can I ask you, I noticed that you don't have a water bottle. Can I ask you about that? Here's a gift card for $20 gift card to Starbucks. We used to do that all the time. That's called guerrilla user research. You don't have time and money to like do a huge study, but you need some anecdotal input about your assumptions. And so, we would go and talk to maybe like 12 people. And even just that sometimes would bring up new aha moments for us. So, now that I know it's young commuters, I can move forward with a little bit of this scrappy guerrilla research, go down to a train platform with some Starbucks gift cards and say, hey, looks like you're carrying a water bottle. Can I ask you about that? Or, hey, it looks like you're not carrying a water bottle. I'd like to know about that. And then get their sentiment about how they feel about carrying water bottles, why they have one with them and why some of them don't, and get some of those first person insights. I think that is really one of the beautiful things early on about crafting a problem statement. Not only does it help create alignment on the team, but it sets up the type of user research that you might do, and it changes the way that you might design your solution. I'm going to design something very different for young commuters than I would for elderly women on hospice. It's just a very different mindset, different priorities, different framing. Now, at this point, I haven't really introduced myself, and you might be wondering, who the heck am I, and why am I so focused on problems and so wanting to go deep into problems? Well, the answer is that I spent about 15 years in user experience design. I have worked at large-scale agencies doing design for companies like the ones Casey mentioned, Nike, Coca-Cola, American Express, Domino's, literally most of the household brands that you've used. If you've ever shopped at Old Navy, if you've ever ordered a pizza from Domino's, you've actually touched some of the software that I've worked on in my life. I also founded a clean beauty tech startup called Nail Snaps, which won several awards and had an exit in 2019. I also happen to be a backyard gardener and a cat parent. Anybody who wants to connect with me can do that by visiting me through LinkedIn. And I had this really, good career, I would say, working my way up from a junior designer to a VP of product design at a major digital agency. It felt like success. And I got to lead websites. I got to build apps. I got to do engagement campaigns, help people. I even created a new holiday. If you've ever heard of Shop Small Saturday, I worked on the American Express campaign for that, which we got Congress to approve as an actual recognized day, and Obama tweeted about it. So I felt like I had this really great career, and I got to work on all these big brands that my mother actually had heard of. And it felt really good. I was very much patting myself on the back at the time. But then 2020 hit. And like a lot of people, I had this really deep moment of reckoning about what I was actually creating in the world. And I realized that all my design skill and all of this ability to change hearts and minds and, create movements and change people's behavior was just being wasted to push fast fashion, to increase meat consumption, to get more people to buy more junk that ended up filling landfills, washing up on beaches, and generally contributing to you, me, and everyone I know being full of microplastic. And I had this like, oh, it's me. I'm the problem. Hi. I was not working in a way that aligned with how I felt about the world. I was making a lot of money and I was making my bosses very happy, but I wasn't actually feeling good deep down in my soul about the way that the things that I worked on actually contributed to the world that I was living in and the world that I wanted, you know, my young nieces and nephews to inherit. I started feeling really crappy about everything I had done. And I really felt like I needed to turn myself around in terms of what I've put my energy into. You know, in a weird way, I realized I was on a macro level working on the wrong problems and needed to reframe the problems that I decided to take on. And so I pivoted, and now I work in climate and food justice. I am a California Climate Action Corps fellow, and I am working currently at a host site called Seeds of Hope, where I help people access fresh food, grow gardens, build healthier and more sustainable communities, teach them how to compost, the whole kit and caboodle. And guess what? The single biggest thing that helped make my work impactful when I was at those other careers and also now in this job, it had nothing to do with flashy design. It's not being a whiz at Canva or Figma or Adobe or any of those things. It's really about getting crystal clear on the problem first. Just today, I was at a food distribution. There was a typo in the flyer for our food distribution that we do every Tuesday. Did not matter at all because what really matters is that we have free food at those food distributions. The flyer can be completely ugly. People are going to come because there's free food, and it's going to spread like wildfire because there's free food. We started 5 years ago giving food at Plummer Park to 11 people. Now it's up to over 300, and we do that every week. So the flyer doesn't really matter. It's actually irrelevant because most people are going to just take that flyer, forget about it. It actually ends up being more trash. What's really helpful is that when they come to the food distribution, they're treated with dignity. They get to choose which produce they want. They don't have to take a bag that we give them. They get to pick, oh, I want apples, but I don't want onions. Yes to cucumbers, no to lettuce. So even though they're not spending any money, there's this sense of control over the food that they decide to take. And then they become partners in helping us keep all that food out of landfill, because even the food that we give away is rescued, donated food that would otherwise end up putrefying in a landfill. So it's a real flip of what I used to do versus what I do today. And it's a flip I feel really, really excited about. And we are always looking for volunteers. So if you are interested in joining us at a food distribution or a community compost hub, we manage food distributions all over Los Angeles. You can visit seedsofhopela.org to learn more about getting involved. We always need help at compost night on Wednesdays at Echo Park. And we're always looking for people who especially speak Spanish or Korean or Tagalog or Russian to come and help us give out food in food deserts all over Los Angeles. So that's who I am. That was my big pivot. Now let's get back to problems. What happens when problems are poorly defined is they're actually really expensive. There is a huge cost to ambiguity. And it's one of the reasons why I like clear communication, because I know how expensive it can be to not communicate clearly. What happens when a problem is poorly defined, those vague problems mean that the design team and the engineers who are building the solution end up wandering in their process. The team doesn't have focus. The solution, whatever ends up coming out of it, is kind of scattershot, little all over the place. And the team might even end up chasing solution to the wrong problem altogether. It also means that we're not going to have the right user research. If you don't have a clear sense of who you're solving for, you might not even be talking to the right user. And your user research is probably going to miss the mark. You risk gathering irrelevant data that sounds really important. Let's go back to that hole story. If all I care about is building a hole, I might spend a ton of time deciding exactly where the hole should be, how big it should be so that it can fit the maximum human arms, you know, what's the right range of hole sizes that we're going to offer in our vehicles. Total waste of time and energy. It also means ineffective solutions. So weak problem definition leads to solutions that miss the real issue. Designers build what they think the user needs instead of what the user actually needs. And this is like putting a really fancy Band-Aid on the wrong wound. It looks great but it's not going to help anybody. And ultimately, this boils down to frustration and dissatisfaction because just like your users, you and everyone you know, we all can sense it. People will feel when a design doesn't work for them, and poorly defined problems translate into really confusing navigation or unclear design, too many messages. It feels like the content is irrelevant and kind of all over the place, and that drives people away. So beautiful solutions that solve nothing important. That's what happens when the problems are poorly designed. And you can avoid this. You can avoid this with following these 4 simple things. First, of course, get your problem statement right, and then use that problem statement to drive deeper user research. Now that I know who I'm designing for, I can go and talk to those people. And this allows me to then prioritize what their needs are. You know, going back to the car story, once I know, oh, drivers can't see when it rains, that's a more important problem to solve than, say, adjustable seats. I need to solve that problem, the problem of drivers can't see when it rains, because they're going to crash. And it's not going to matter that the seats are comfortable or more cushy if they've already crashed their vehicle. So understanding what the real problem is also lets me prioritize the problems that I want to solve. And that becomes really important if you're working on software where you're getting input from customer support with a backlog of issues and user needs and wants that need to be changed. You've got business priorities telling you, oh, we need to do this so we can charge more money, and this is what sales is telling us to build. You have to use the user focused lens and go, okay, sales wants this, and customer support says that users want this. But when I've talked to users, they're saying this other thing entirely. And this other thing entirely could mean that people end up crashing their cars, or that they miss their medicine and, you know, have a problem with their health. Depending on what you're designing, the consequences could literally be life and death. One of the last in-house jobs that I had before I pivoted into climate was in healthcare. And we were working on systems that democratized clinical trials so that instead of going into a hospital to participate in a clinical trial, you could do it at home and the nurse would come to you. If we didn't get the alerts right, though, it meant that those patients missed their meds. And the consequence of that could be death, because they were on these clinical trials as a Hail Mary because all the other methods out there didn't work. So it's really important to make sure that you're prioritizing user needs above everything else and pushing back on sales and customer support and all the other voices and forces that are going to be communicating with you. Back to Rachel's talk from Tuesday, that's where your soft skills come in. You also have to make sure that you're testing and iterating, because does the solution that you came up with actually solve the problem you identified? You might have clearly identified the right problem to solve and then come up with a solution that you thought was going to fix it, but actually doesn't, and maybe even brings up more problems. So you have to test even your solution, test your assumptions after the fact. So bottom line, define sharply the who, what, why, and don't get into solutioning until you really have those things well understood, not just by you, but by the entire team. Because if you have a different understanding of the who, what, why, the engineers are going to go build one thing while you're off designing something else entirely. Another story like that is about the New York City startup that designed these smart trash cans. They would text city workers when the trash cans were full. And it was really great tech, but the problem wasn't knowing when the cans were full. Everybody could see when the cans were full, and the drivers could see when they drove down the street. The problem was that nobody was using those cans because they were actually positioned in bad locations. So again, millions of dollars wasted by the city because the problem wasn't clearly defined. And the solution that they came up with for that ill-defined problem also missed the mark. So it was just, you know, bad cascading on bad. The bottom line, sharp problems mean powerful design for you, and it means you're not going to be wasting your time working on the wrong thing. When you define the problem really, really well, You're unlocking the full power of your skills as a designer to create things that really, truly matter in this world. And speaking of things that truly matter in this world, I want us to now get personal. So let's talk about sharpening problem statements. We want to move away from vague language into clear language using the who, what, and why, and give ourselves problem statements that allow us to measure our outcomes and make real change. And now I want us to do a little exercise where together, well, actually, first, I want you to come up with your own problem statement. And you can do this in the chat. I want you to craft a problem statement about your own climate problem that bothers you, something that frustrates you personally, or something that you see out in the world. So in your problem statement, it should be one sentence long. For the purposes of this, I'll tell you there's lots of ways to craft problem statements, and some businesses have their own template for crafting problem statements. Some of them are much longer than this, but the crucial elements are the who, the what, and the why. So for the purposes of our exercise today, stick with this. I'm going to give you just a few minutes, and I'm going to stop presenting for a bit because I want to see what's in chat. I want you to just write problem statements into the chat. Oh my gosh. By the way, I'm loving all these comments. These are great questions, and I've left time in the Q&A at the end of this so that we can dive into this. But right now, think about a problem. I'm going to go back to my slides so you can see this. Who's the user? What do they need? And why does it matter? So just take a minute, think about it. I should have some like music, probably Taylor Swift to keep with my theme. I'm going to give it 3 minutes. Just imagining someday all of the automated note taker bots are also going to be giving interaction and coming up with like answers to these Zoom prompts. Okay. National parks are being cut. It's super unfair, and it needs to be stopped. It matters because they are so beautiful and defenseless. The users are Americans who are able to get to the park, cause a travel cost most. I'm not sure if oh, sorry. Travel costs money. Yes, it does. So not all can go there, but even Americans who can't visit one probably still want them protected. They are part of the national heritage. This might still have a lot of assumptions. One, really good recognizing that there's definitely some assumptions built into that. How can you make this a little shorter? Especially when you're presenting to C-level executives, the CEO and the COO and the VP, they want one sentence. So see if you can, SH, see if you can rewrite that in a way that's one sentence. like Americans who visit national parks. Maybe that's your user. Focus it on Americans who visit national parks, want them to remain unadulterated or something like that. And then ask yourself, is that focus helpful? Because if you're only designing for Americans who visited or want to visit parks, it changes the way that you can talk to them. If you're talking to somebody who's never visited a national park, you have a lot more education ahead of you to get them to even know what's in a national park. Yes, yes, Rachel. That's true. The average or even above average citizen, climate conscious citizen doesn't know about composting. Yes. Going to the national park, going to the Grand Canyon can be super inspiring. Does anybody want to read their problem statement? Ooh, here's another good one. Ooh, all these good ones coming in. Residents of my city don't know how to find local sustainable businesses, but they say they would prefer to buy at and support a local sustainable business. The source is answers as part of a local climate solution survey I did. Okay, that's great. That's really awesome, Tatiana, that you've now done a little bit of research. So there's an assumption in there, but it's based on some anecdotal data. Or depending on how robust the study was, some pretty reliable data. I think that's great. So Angelinos say that they want to buy local, but they struggle to find sustainable business, buy local sustainable businesses, but they struggle to find and support them. And what is the impact of that? So you've got the who, you've got the what the problem is, but what is the impact of that problem? Maybe see if you can add that, maybe shorten it and then add what's the impact, because you want the who, what, and why. Who is hurt by this? And it could be a double-edged sword. Like it's hurting the person who wants to be more eco-friendly in their shopping, and it also hurts those small businesses. Okay. Is there anybody who wants to talk about their problem statement that I didn't mention that? Yeah, go ahead.
I do.
Yes.
So I think the reason why I became a designer is because like I'm very sensitive to the environment, and I identify pain points very quickly, like a canary in the coal mine.
Mm.
So my mind is always finding solutions or ways to accommodate. And a lot of this work that you're describing is stuff that I do just to get by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what I pasted there was an example of that. Like it says I'm a synthesizer nerd, and I trade parts with people, and I prefer not to buy them and pay tax like 4 times and ship it and everything. So if there was a reliable way to trade things, and there was like a big group of people doing that, then it would save a lot of waste and eliminate a lot of shipping. I think it would be really good for the environment if that existed. Like, or it doesn't have to be for synthesizer nerds. It could be for camera parts or anything, a way to trade instead of buy.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could simplify this down to one sentence just by saying synthesizer nerds don't have a reliable way to safely trade gear. So that I notice I'm cutting the word online because that's an assumption and that's a solution. It's probable that your solution is going to end up that way when you actually talk to some of these synthesizer nerds, but keep the solutioning out of your problem statement. It doesn't belong there. And you could just say synthesizer nerds don't have a reliable way to safely trade gear. And this is a problem because, and this impacts them negatively by forcing them to purchase expensive gear And it adds more waste to landfill when that gear becomes no longer useful to them. And so that's one sentence. It says all of it and it completely keeps the sentence, it keeps the solution completely out. You're not talking about any technology or where this might live yet. You said something else though. You said I'm constantly thinking of pain points. It can be very, very attractive to start thinking about the pain points and immediately coming up with fixes for them and come up with like a feature list. Beware of the feature list in your problem statement. Feature lists are very useful, but they come later. Right now, you don't want to talk about a feature list. You want to really just focus on the problem. So, I heard you say, pain points, and I imagined a feature list in my head instantly, and I'm like, ooh, gotta stay away from that in a problem statement.
I, I I've alluded to this, but like, so I was like a designer without any training, and then I went to art school. I got an MFA, but not in design. And then when I graduated, I came back to design, and I've been done many decades of design, but I never had a formal training. And I've been in a lot of environments where this kind of stuff is going on, and I know all about it, but it's never been explained to me in a way that's systematized, makes sense. And it's embarrassing to ask when you're that deep in your career. So I'm absolutely loving everything that you're telling me.
Oh, but I also am a untrained designer. I came to this by curiosity, and I'm a lifelong learner. Like I'm taking a class right now. Emily is the aide in another class that I'm taking here at West LA College because I'm learning how to do environmental data modeling, ecological data modeling, which I'll be honest, I'm way out of my depth in that course, but I feel like it's important to learn ecological data modeling, not so I can become a data scientist, but so I can understand the language that data scientists use. And when I have a question that I need an answer for, I know how to communicate the ways that I want that answer to be arrived at. So yeah, I think it's great that you're staying open and keeping a beginner's mind so that you can absorb new concepts because everything's changing too. Whatever worked 5 years ago doesn't even work. Like the tools are changing, the concepts are changing. But I'll tell you this, sharp problem statements, not changed. This was one trick in the toolbox that has served me at every role I've ever had, regardless of the culture, regardless of the technology that I was working on, or even if it wasn't technology. Sometimes you're designing wayfinding and signage in like a museum. Understanding the problem that you're trying to solve is crucial to solving the problem. Okay. Are there any other ones? Let's see. Residents want to support local sustainable businesses, but don't know how to find them. Harming local economies and increasing emissions from big box store purchases. Ooh, so crisp. And now you have a nice enemy in there too. I think that's great. That's much better. National parks inspire all Americans, especially kids, and their uptake and defense is threatened. This would diminish an American heritage. Still a little too vague. I like that you're not getting into solutioning. You have definitely got a wide target audience because it's just all Americans, especially kids. I think the problem that you're kind of like starting to more clearly articulate is about the fact that the parks are once protected are now being threatened. And so the impact of this is their ability, their inheritance as humans on this planet to see the natural world and benefit from it in all of the ways that a human animal gets to: breathing the clean air, eating the food, seeing the loveliness of it, and interacting with our more than human relatives. So you could go much further by getting shorter, which sounds counterintuitive, but the crisper and shorter your problem statement is, the easier it is for your team also to get aligned on it. And that's another huge important thing about a problem statement. It becomes like a North Star for you and everybody working on the project. We all know who our user is. We all know exactly what their problem is, and we all know why it's important for us to solve it. Yeah, not being formally trained has not held me back at all. I really am impressed, with folks like you guys who show up to these kinds of classes. Like being a lifelong learner and taking these kinds of classes, even if you end up not working in design, classes like this will really help you because you're probably going to have to do some amount of communications and marketing in almost every role. You're definitely going to have some problem solving. So yeah. Yes. Okay. Thank you all for that. Now, I was going to have you go into breakout rooms, but since we're small group, I'm going to ask you to do something very scary and kind of vulnerable, and that is turn your cameras on and come off mute. Because what we're about to do together now is somewhat of a team sport. And it's really, really important that you get at least one practice doing this together as a group. Because the reality is, you are probably not going to ever have the luxury of crafting a problem statement ever again. What you just did, making the problem statement about something you care about, deciding who the user is that you're designing for, deciding what problem you're going to solve for them, and deciding why it matters. Unless you start your own company, you're never going to be in the driver's seat on any of those things. And deciding to start your own company comes with its own host of challenges. So, what is more common in your future, anywhere you work, is that you're going to have to craft the problem statement as a collaborative exercise with a team. You're going to have your engineers in the room. You're going to have your marketing people in the room. You might even have your CEO in the room, depending on the size and culture of the company. So, if we could all come off of mute, turn on our cameras. I know it's like vulnerable. I will say if you really, really are like, oh, my place is a mess and I just got out of the shower and you really don't want to have your camera on, totally okay. But at least speak up because we are going to need your voices. And for this exercise, I'm going to play the role of annoying CEO, and I'm going to be stubborn and hard to convince. So first, as a group, we're going to choose one of these vague problem statements. So I want you to just read these problem statements that I'm showing on the screen now. I'm going to go back to full screen. Okay, so we're not going to break into groups. We're just going to choose to collaboratively which one of these we want to update. So we want to raise awareness about food waste. We need to stop people from littering in parks. Design a fun social media campaign about solar power. And people don't care about food waste. Which one of these do we want to work on? Now I'm going to go back out of full screen presenting mode. And I'm going to make this small so you guys can see what I see. Okay. So just put in the chat which one you're voting on. 1, 2, 3, or 4. We got a 1. Anybody disagree? Going once, going twice. Okay, we're going to work on statement number 1. Okay, this is our vague problem statement. And I am the boss. I am the boss of a startup company, and I am telling you, as my employees, that I care deeply about food waste. And I'm tired of seeing people scrape their trash, scrape their plates after dinner into the trash can. I'm tired of seeing restaurants throw out tons and tons of food. And, people just don't realize. So we want to raise awareness about food waste. Now, one of what, can anybody tell me one of the good things about this problem statement? Is there anything good in it?
Food waste is the problem.
Well, yeah, we've got food waste is the clear problem that we want to tackle. True. Another good thing about it is we don't have anything in there about a solution. That's really good. If I was coming to you and said, I want you to build an app to help people about food waste, I'd be rolling my eyes and going, oh, nobody's opening up an app in a restaurant to remind themselves to like not, waste their food. And nobody's going to be like opening up an app while they're standing in their refrigerator, letting the grapes rot because they just don't have the time to eat them, So, okay, so it doesn't have a solution. That's the good news. Another good news is that we are focused on the problem of food waste. But I want everybody to care about food waste. Everybody should care about food waste. How would you change my mind about that? How would you, what kinds of questions could you ask me as the boss to get focus on who we're talking about, who we really want to design for? Can anybody think of a way to, yeah, it does affect everyone. Exactly, Rachel. It affects everybody. So I want this to be for everyone. But that's a problem. Hint, hint, that's a problem. Change my mind. Because you can't design something for everyone. You can design websites that appeal to the masses, but they have to be things that the masses already want to do, like order pizza. If you're actually trying to change someone's behavior, you have to be very targeted. So a question that you might ask me is, everyone, okay, so we're going to have this available in every language, and that's going to get me thinking, ooh, and you can say, oh, that might be a little expensive. That's really going to get me thinking. You could say, kids? Are we talking to kids or adults? Oh, well, I feel like it's maybe the parents' responsibility to teach their kids. So let's focus on adults. Or I could say, oh, the parents are a lost cause. So let's really focus on kids. Maybe I have that assumption. So I'm going to say, I'm going to assume that adults are a lost cause. So yeah, let's focus on kids. All right.
You just took my thunder. I was just gonna focus on adults and be like, you know how much money you're wasting every month throwing food away? So that doesn't work anymore.
Okay. So
Kids, I have to rethink.
what's that?
For kids, I have to rethink.
Well, change my mind.
Well, I personally think I would target adults, parents, maybe is a
Mhm.
good idea. So I can have a trickle down maybe to kids later on. But I would go with literally how much food is wasted.
Mhm.
Let's say in the US alone, just
Mhm.
a little bit of a smaller geography
Mhm.
in the whole world, and try to boil it down how that it actually hits your personal wallet.
Mhm.
I mean, I think in the US the number is like 1/3 of all food is wasted
Mhm.
in households. So that's a lot of money you're throwing away into, hopefully into the green bin. So
Okay. So adults, all adults, every adult, every adult on the planet? Yes, I'm going to say yes, but that's wrong.
yeah, I was gonna say yes. I was the one who buys food.
Okay, okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Who buys the food? Who who,
Um,
who buys the food in most families?
I don't want to assume, so I don't go with that. But I would say parents. I would start with parents.
Okay.
And then probably I think the wallet problem is not a problem for the top 10%. So I would exclude them from my awareness campaign. Don't care, they don't care.
Mhm.
So we're targeting like a middle class and kind of household income at whatever those numbers are and down from there. So people that notice the difference if they would actually only buy the food that they eat.
Mhm.
So I don't know if we can target specific households in this fictitious campaign. I would assume yes.
Well, so it sounds like you're leaning towards us focusing on um, middle-class parents.
Yeah,
Okay.
as a start.
And do we know if middle-class parents, uh, do we know what awareness middle-class parents have about food waste? Or what do they know or not know? We don't know, right? Okay. So me as the CEO, I think I want them to know more than they know. I don't think they know enough about food waste. Um, and so a question you can ask as the designer is, um, how are we going to determine how much knowledge they already have? And like they might already be aware about food waste, but don't know how to fix it. Like, yeah, food waste is bad, methane gas in the landfills. Anyway, I got to run. I got to make lunch for my kids. They're not going to eat that I'm going to throw away later when it's rotting in their lunchbox. Right? So you want to discuss in full view with your engineer and your marketing team um, what, if this is really the target, young parents, is the problem that they're not aware, or is the problem that they don't care? Or is it or is the problem that they are aware, but they just don't feel like their lifestyle allows them to do anything differently?
Good
Which ones of those are the real problem? I don't know the answer, by the way.
I think all of them, right? In a way,
Yeah.
they just need different approaches. But yeah, all of
Right.
them are kind of
Right.
fun.
So, at this point, if you've at least identified the who, young parents, you could go out and talk to some of them and get some data. Maybe, put a survey up on Facebook for new parents. Maybe, go to the grocery store and stand in the parking lot and ask people, hey, I'll give you a $20 Ralph's gift card if you talk to me a little bit about, your habits at home. This will take 15 minutes. And do some user research. Be careful not to prime them by saying, oh, tell me about your knowledge of food waste. You want to ask them, oh, how many times a week do you feel like you have to throw food away because it's gone bad? Like, get them to be honest by not talking about like the climate impact, but talking about real relatable habits that we all have, and get them to really open up about that. Once you have that knowledge, you can come back to this conversation, the collaborative conversation, and say, hey, we thought that we needed to raise awareness about food waste. Turns out everybody's aware about it and they don't care. So we need to actually change their minds and make them see why they should care. Or you could come back from that research and say, hey, turns out we were right. Nobody even knows that food waste is a problem. And once you kind of tell them a little bit, they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I've got to make some changes. That's probably not likely. People probably already know a little bit about food waste. My hunch, my hypothesis is that the real culprit is a lot of people are aware of food waste, but they think that the quantities of food that they're throwing away won't make a difference. And it's not convenient to do anything different than they're already doing. But you have to talk to them to find out which ones of those hypotheses are true. And once you've talked to them, then you can actually create a statement that aligns more truthfully to the real problem. Young parents, I'm going to just guess at the one that I think is true. but I wouldn't know until I talked to young parents and got some data, because I'm not my parent and I already really care about food waste and I already do a lot. So I'm not the target. So if you can't go based off of my assumption, I would be doing a disservice, even as an experienced designer. I would never go off of my own assumption without being very clear and caveating it a million ways to Sunday. This is my hypothesis, is a guess. I don't have any data. What I would rather do is go get that data and then say, based on our study of 50 people in the Ralph's parking lot in Los Angeles, half of whom were female and half of whom were male, all of whom had children under 10. It seems that these young parents care a lot and are already aware of food waste, but don't feel like the habits of overcoming food waste are convenient or fit their lifestyle. That might be the real problem. And then if that's the real problem, what is the effect of that? Can anybody talk about what the impact is? Why does that matter? If we've said that it's young parents are the who, and they don't know how to change in a way that feels convenient for them, what is the impact of that problem?
Methane gas in the landfills.
That's a huge impact, right? We continue to create more methane gas that heats up our planet and makes it harder and harder, ironically, to grow food. Our food waste is keeping us from being able to grow food. We are, I heard about deer one time, that these deer would go into a field and these deer went extinct. This population of deer died out because they were let loose in this protected space and they ate all of the food that was available to them, and then there was no more food and they died. And I remember thinking, dumb deer. But we're doing the same thing. We are a very smart species that might go extinct because it's inconvenient to do the things that could keep us thriving and alive on this planet. It's inconvenient to compost, but if we're not putting nutrient-rich organic matter back into our soil is getting less and less nutrient dense. An apple today is nowhere near as nutritious as an apple was 50 years ago. And not only are we not giving the soil the nutrients it needs to grow more apples, we're also putting putrefied, rotting apples into landfill where they never become soil. They just become methane gas and liquid yuck. And that makes our planet hotter and hotter and hotter, and we can't grow food. So vicious, vicious cycle. But people are very, very stopped by the fact that it's inconvenient to just put their kitchen scraps in a little container and take them to a compost hub. If they don't have a green bin accessible, many people just straight up won't compost. They'll just keep throwing their trash away into their trash can. So the convenience factor, especially here in the United States, is we're addicted to convenience in the United States, truly addicted. When I was working at an agency, we did a lot of work with food research and talking about, people's desire for food and food availability. And we talked about strawberries. Strawberries only grow in summer. They're supposed to only grow in summer. There's strawberry season for a reason. And the strawberries that grow in that season are the tastiest, most beautiful strawberries. But we use a lot of chemical intervention and biohacking to make strawberries grow in places that they shouldn't 365 days a year. And then we sell it in a blister pack of plastic. And as Americans, we're all addicted to being able to go to Ralph's any day of the year and expecting that strawberries will be there. How could they not have strawberries when I need them? And we expect those strawberries to be ripe and perfect and beautiful, and they might not taste as good, and they're definitely not as nutritious, but those are trade-offs we're willing to make for the convenience of knowing that the strawberry is there 365 days a year. It's kind of bad. So it's really about that convenience factor for us in America. And if we can't give people ways to change in a way that's convenient to their lifestyle, they straight up won't do it. Thank you, SH. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I was thinking about the addiction to convenience, and it's kind of, I'm thinking about like it's the addiction to convenience and also the addiction to being able to give people whatever they want, no matter what the cost, so that you can get more profit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, at Seeds of Hope, I work in food rescue, and a lot of the food all of the food that we give out at food distributions, we give away 70,000 pounds of food. If students are struggling, by the way, to buy groceries, you can send them to seedsofhopela.org to see a list of all of the places that we give out free food. We move 70,000 pounds of fresh produce every week. That's food that would have ended up in landfill, and we just take it before it's gone, like before it goes off, and we give it away as quickly as possible so that people can eat it and hopefully compost whatever they don't eat, hopefully. But that food is in a place where we can get it because the grocery stores have decided it's more profitable to sell that head of cabbage at a higher price, and they'll sell fewer of them and make a profit selling cabbage at a high expensive price. Even if it means other people can't afford that cabbage, they'd rather take fewer and sell them at a high price than take the surplus that we have and sell them at a third of the price, a quarter of the price. We do not have a supply problem of food in California. We actually have a massive surplus. We have a distribution problem, and we have a price gouging problem. And so we have pounds and pounds and pounds of free fresh food. Rachel has been to some of our distributions and volunteered at them. And yeah, it's not inflation, it's distribution. It's mostly distribution. And I will say one tiny little thing where we can all take some part of the blame. Just like we're addicted to convenience, we're addicted to perfection. We want every single bell pepper to be the same exact shape, no misshapen apples, no slightly, weird side loppy bell peppers. They all have to be perfect and standing up and beautiful. And we throw away the ones that aren't. And then we also throw away the ones that we don't think we can sell at the same high price. Yeah. Okay, so back to our problem. We've talked about young moms or young parents. Young parents are aware of food waste, but they lack convenient ways to address food waste in their own households. And the impact of this is more food ending up in landfill. I think that's a pretty solid who, what, and why. I guess I didn't end up playing the nasty mean boss. Does anybody have any questions about this exercise? Okay, I'm going to go back to presenting. We're almost at the end here. But I really want to impart the importance of this. And I appreciate somebody said that they've heard this before, but it maybe didn't land the same way. I'm really happy that it's landing this time, because you are not just designers. If you are working in climate, you're also an activist. You're an activist that potentially is going up the U.S. federal government, up against the U.S. federal government, because climate change is real. And we here in Los Angeles are seeing the effects of climate change in the form of extreme weather events, like it's hot one day, it's cold the next. We're also experiencing crazy wildfires, crazy droughts, and then weird flooding. Like we get this wildly erratic weather. We see it, we experience it, we know it's real. And as a climate designer, every pixel, every poster, every campaign that you work on, that's really a chance for you to either make more greenwashed junk or to cut deep into the heart of a real problem and make a lasting impact, potentially be part of the solution in a real way. So it's important for you to get super sharp on the problem so that your designs can be truly, truly unstoppable. Thank you. And now I'm going to open it up for some Q&A. I'm also going to stop sharing my screen so that I can just look at you guys. And I saw some questions in chat earlier that I thought were kind of interesting. So I'm going to scroll back up through there. Let's see. Somebody asked if like, what was the thing that like really made me change? Like, it seemed like a huge pivot to go from like literally designing things that were causing meat consumption to, you know, trying to make everybody go vegan. It's a big pivot. I'll say it wasn't just one moment. It was a series of moments. So, you know, I was already vegetarian and kind of flirting with the idea of going vegan. I was watching a lot of Netflix documentaries about the effects of overconsumption. And when you work in marketing, your whole job is to get people to buy stuff. And watching, there was one documentary I watched, it was called Brandy Hellville, really great one. They talk about not just the misogyny and sexism and ageism in the Brandy Melville stores, but also they talk about fast fashion and the impact that fast fashion has on our planet. And one of the scenes was this beach in Ghana. So previously, for decades, Americans were sending our textile waste, like, you know, we give to Goodwill, and then the Goodwill gives to the Salvation Army. And then at the end of the line, there's pounds and pounds and pounds of clothes that nobody here wants anymore. And those for decades used to get shipped to third world countries, what we used to call third world. Now we call them emerging market countries. And the guy in the documentary said, we called the dead white people clothes because we thought nobody would give away a perfectly good shirt. So they must have died. And then we found out that they weren't dead people. It was just they got tired of the shirt. And now we've received so much from these people in this country have received so much of our unwanted, no longer fashionable clothing that they have stopped receiving the shipments of textile waste. They've refused them at the port because they have so much already flooding their market, they don't know what to do with it. They've got literal mountains of textiles in some of these countries where we ship off our textile waste to. And because they're no longer taking it in port, the shipping containers are just dumping it into the ocean. And so now there is a beach in Ghana where you have to dig 7 feet down before you will actually hit sand because that beach is so covered in clothing waste, textile waste, just washing up from these shipping containers. I mean, I used to work on Shopapalooza campaigns for Old Navy, like talk about fast fashion. So like, I really felt like I needed personally a karmic offset. And every new Netflix documentary that I watched reinforced that point and then, you know, really sitting with that reality during the pandemic, it was just like, I don't know, I can't unknow these things. I can't contribute anymore the way that I was contributing. And so it's been a complete 180 for my life. Like, I'll be honest, I make a significantly lower salary than I ever made when I worked for these big agencies, but I sleep better. I feel much better about what I do. I'm proud of the work I do in a way that I could never be proud of selling you more pizza. Let's see, I'm going to scroll through these other questions. Yeah, somebody I can't seem to find the question, but I think I saw it earlier. Talking about my career path. You know, it's funny, I feel like I've done my entire career backwards, like absolutely backwards. The normal career path, normal, there's no really normal, but the career path that is kind of held up as like the standard, which is complete lie, is that you go to design school and then you land your first job as like baby junior designer, you know, in a small agency or maybe a small company. And then you work your way up to senior designer and associate director, and then all the way up to maybe chief design officer. And you do that by hopping from one company to the next, because that's how you get promotions in design, is you quit. And then you get a higher title and a higher salary. It's probably how you get promotions in a lot of careers, but I know it's for sure true in the design world that the best way to give yourself a promotion is to take a new job at a different company. So because the company that you're with only is ever going to see you as a junior designer. That's the normal path. But I didn't do the normal path because I didn't go to college. I actually dropped out of college. I was studying journalism and I wanted to be a journalist, which sounds like it has no relation to the design world, but it has a ton, because journalists have to take input from a lot of different sources and turn all of that input soup into a cohesive narrative to write a story about something. And designers really do the same thing. You might take input from the CEO who says, make the logo bigger, and from the marketing person, make sure you include these bullet points of all the features. And from the engineer, here's the QR code that you have to use, but make sure that it's in the lower right-hand part of the screen, because if it's anywhere else, it's not going to scan properly. You have all of these different inputs and constraints that you're working with. And as a designer, your job is to, again, create a cohesive narrative. So for me, journalism was a straight line to where I am today. But it wasn't kind of the norm. And when I left college and started working in design, I was working in design really as a project manager. Designer wasn't even something that was on my radar until I started learning like that the engineers think so differently. The software that they were making for the company I worked with, it was really hard to use. And I kept saying, this is only making sense to the engineers, and their brains are different than normal, regular, non-computer savvy people. I need to intercept the what it looks like and how it behaves, because if we let the designers be in charge of what the software looks like and how it behaves and how you interact with it, nobody's going to be able to use it except for the engineers. So let me change the way that this looks and behaves on the front end so that Kathy in accounting can use this, because she's never going to touch it if it looks like this. It's going to just overwhelm her and freak her out. So I started intercepting that, and that's when I realized, oh, that's design, that's software design. And I still didn't go back to school. I just started going onto online forums and asking people questions and reading a ton of books, which you can't see behind me because I can't turn off my background, but I have a giant stack of design books. And back in the olden days, when Twitter was popular, you could read a book, a really cool design book like by Luke Wroblewski about form design, and then tweet to him asking him a question about form design online, and he would answer. So it was like this magical time where you could be doing the work and getting expert advice from everybody, all the other designers all over the world. So I learned a ton. I got very heavily involved in the UX community. If you listened to Mark O'Brien's talk about climate designers, or actually Rachel, who's also still here today, Rachel runs the LA Climate Designer community. So getting involved with your peers who are working on things is another great way to move your career forward, especially if you haven't gone to college and you just don't have that network. You can make the network for yourself by getting involved in a community like that. And there are people doing incredible work. and a lot of people who are unemployed. So you'll have camaraderie either way. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions specifically about problem statements or any of the concepts that I talked about today in terms of like the need and importance of crafting a problem statement with a team?
I guess I'll just hop in. Because when I was in design school, or actually it was one of the cohorts that I was part of a billion years ago, it was very similar. It was like, okay, like we really need to like look at what the goal is that they're trying to achieve, because they might come at you like, oh, we need an app, we need a website, but like defining the problem, you will realize like, oh no, actually, here's something that you need. So how do you push back against, let's just say, a creative director or a boss type who's like, nope, the client asked for a website, we got to deliver that website, you know?
I mean, God, the number of times that I've had that experience. So I would say in the middle of my career, I found myself working at an agency. Sorry, just a sec. Alexa, stop. In the middle of my career, I found myself working at they're a digital agency called Huge. And they have done lots of large scale web projects for lots of big name brands and companies. And I was like a mid-level designer at the time. But I was very, very about process. I had just done the Cooper practicum, UX design practicum, created by Alan Cooper, which was foundational to the way I then started approaching design and being very user-centered, not just talking about the user, but actually talking to the user, having the user talk to me, listening to the user input, making sure I was getting user input. Even if they weren't going to pay for research, I was going to do the research by like doing that guerrilla kind of research. So I was working on I was working on one of our clients was Disney. It was Disney Rewards, and we had done some user research, and I was like, oh, by the way, the research shows that I can't even remember exactly what it was, but it was like, we're expecting them to go to the website to do XYZ, and the research shows that that is not something they're going to do, that this is not a moment that they're going to be interceptable, because they're not going to pick up their phones at that moment to do the thing that we want them to do. And rather than build a website, what we might do instead is a campaign that helps them remember this thing at the point of purchase. Can we do that instead? And the account manager was just like, they are paying us $2 million to build this website. So we're going to build them a website. However, when the website is done, we can talk to them about these other ideas that you have. And I was like, okay, well, spoiler, we never talked to them about those other ideas. But it kind of made me understand that like when you're working in a capitalist extractive company for extractive capitalist brands, sometimes the truth is not what anybody's after. That they don't care about that thing. They want to make money. And even the agencies that I was working for was part of that system. I'd love to tell you that I quit in a blaze of righteous indignation, but I didn't. I ended up actually getting poached from that job to go into an even more capitalist and even more extractive role for a larger agency. And that's where I did like my huge brand, like my big brand work for like Domino's, contributing to global diabetes and obesity. So truthfully, I wish I could say that I was better. I wish I could say I was a better person and that I voted with my feet and stuck to my principles. But I also wanted to make money, and I kept sticking with that system and working in that way for a long, long time. It took a lot of discomfort for me to finally step away from that. And the very last pitch that I ever did was working on a pitch deck to win a new client for the agency that I was with. And the client was Foster Farms. I, by this time, was almost 90% vegan. I was still eating fish, only on occasion if I was out somewhere, but I didn't eat chicken anymore. And here I am working on a campaign to convince people that Foster Farms chicken is healthy and good for you, when I know it's full of hormones and the havoc that it's wreaking on the planet because of the problems of factory farming. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to take this. I don't want to win this work. I don't want to work on this work. I really don't want to win this pitch. But here we are. I just got flown up to the headquarters with my team, and I'm walking in with my sassy pantsuit, and I'm so excited to quit because I realized if we get this, I'm going to have to work on it, and I'm going to hate myself, and I'm going to hate every single step of this. And as I'm having this big, like, oh God, I really do have to quit my job moment, we're walking into the headquarters, and I can see the processing plant was right next to the headquarters. So literal smokestacks of processing chemicals and yuck. It's like chicken Auschwitz was right next to the headquarters. And I was just like, okay, I'm done. And that was when I finally was like, okay, I'm going to not do this anymore. And I gave my notice. And every role I've had since then has either been 100% or mostly focused on corporate social responsibility or nonprofits. But that was my big, I can't do it. I couldn't sell chickens full of hormones, and yeah. But back to your question about pushback, it's hard. You know, how willing are you to stick to your morals in the face of losing your job? It's rough sometimes. Like I said, you can use language like, I have a this is a hypothesis. If somebody's making an assumption and you don't want to insult them, instead of calling their guess or assumption, either of those things, say, your hypothesis, that makes them actually sound smart, is blah, blah, blah. You know, have we validated that? Do we have any data on that? Should we get some? That allows them to be in a position of superiority and control about their guess. We're just going to dress it up and call it a hypothesis and give them some control over how they address that hypothesis. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of, I caught something that you were saying, and I find myself in that situation. So I'd like to get back to your uncomfortable time when you quit and you're like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
I'm pivoting. So I'm in that. I've been pivoting for 2 years and I still haven't found my feet. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of, how do you deal with that kind of uncomfortable? You know, I'm like, part of me is still, I come from marketing too. So I've, worked for the big tech companies, now I'm like just looking back in horror, but it was very cushy, it was good salaries. It was
yeah.
very, I don't look back and I'm not ashamed of that. I'm like, no, it has done has given me good opportunities.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, I have a different mindset. Things are different. I'm
Yeah.
pivoting. I, want to work more on climate focused or sustainable, etc. kind of companies. And I find it really difficult, this pivoting time, this time like I've been, learning a lot in the last 2 years, but I still haven't found my feet. So how do you deal with that? Yeah, I call it uncomfortable kind of time frame where you like haven't found your feet yet. You left,
Mhm.
what was cushy and comfortable before because it's not anymore. So how do you deal with that?
Well, first, appreciate it. Appreciate the discomfort, because if you weren't experiencing the discomfort, you wouldn't change. Things would stay the same. So that discomfort might not be anything, it might not be leaving you soon. It might be with you for another 2 years, 10 years. Like periods of change don't have a, fixed life cycle. You might change many times throughout your life. And that's actually good because if you're not, it actually means you're dead. Change is good, but it's always usually in response to a feeling of discomfort. That is how we grow. So first embrace it. I want to ask some questions about your discomfort though. In this, you said I'm having a hard time finding my feet. Can you tell me what that means exactly? Are you saying you're having a hard time finding a job that aligns with your values? Are you saying you're having a hard time pushing back at your work, that you want to stay at this company, but you don't know how to help them change? Like, what does that mean to you? What does finding your feet look like?
So I don't have a job. I'm looking.
Okay.
So, but my whole background is defined by, running marketing campaigns for large tech
Mhm.
companies primarily, right?
Yeah.
So, and now I feel like, well, I used to be an extreme expert. I was at a VP level, everything was good. Now I feel like I'm a junior person in this new field, which is, I'm actually kind of cool with that. I'm like totally fine because I'm also, a lifelong learner. So for me, that's actually not a problem. The problem is I've had when I talk to companies or when I talk to prospective clients, they don't get it.
Mhm.
They're like, well, you don't know enough about our area specifically, and why don't you go back to what you've done before? And I'm like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
What you're doing aligns much more with where I want to be. I have a lot of skills and I have a lot of transferable skills, but if I'm in this like time where it's just really difficult to really make that pitch, or I don't know what it is, and I'm probably there's something I'm doing wrong. Probably there's something else going on. I don't know, but I just find it very uncomfortable, and that's what I mean with finding my feet. I don't know what my next step. I don't even know the direction. I have a very rough idea, like wide open, but I don't know where it is because I can't seem to get into somewhere more specific. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And it totally makes sense. And oh my gosh, I can relate so much. We should have coffee.
We should.
Definitely relate, and you should definitely come to a climate designers event because there's a lot of folks in that same boat who had really robust careers and then have this like big aha moment and don't want to be part of the machine anymore.
Yeah.
But the machine is what pays the bills. Like
Mhm.
we're soaking in it. It's like a fish deciding it doesn't want to live in water anymore. It's a big thing to make this kind of change. And it's funny because, in marketing, you probably, one of your clients, is in, I don't know, finance, and another client is in fashion, and another client is you probably worked in marketing for lots of different clients who had very wildly different domains, and nobody batted an eye because what you were an expert in was the media side or the marketing side. And it didn't matter that this domain was different than this domain because buying Facebook ads is still buying Facebook ads.
Exactly.
What's funny though is it seems like everyone in the clean tech sphere or on the clean, climate jobs wants direct experience in climate jobs, which is kookaroo because a lot of this is new. And I don't know where they think they're going to get like these like experienced people from. Um, but I was experiencing that same kind of problem. I have this very illustrious career with like a highlight of achievements that almost sounds made up. And I'm sending it out for jobs where they're just like, oh, we could never hire you. Or, oh, yeah, but you don't have any experience in EV charging. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, so it was really hard for me too. And I realized for me, it was the great humble reckoning, I call it the great humble reckoning, because I had to let go of all of that past success. It is literally no longer relevant at all for the work that I do now. It gives me a base of confidence to know I can do a lot of things that people are just scratching the surface when they talk to me or hire me for a small job. They have no idea all of the other things I can do for them if given a chance. And I will work that in later. But if I bring that up right now, they're just going to glaze over and think I'm puffing myself up too much. So I a lot of times downplay or don't even bring up the past. I focus on now. And when I had the big humble reckoning, I was like, I don't know enough about the climate jobs that are out there to even know what kind I want. I don't necessarily, I didn't want to work in a marketing capacity anymore. I didn't want to create Facebook campaigns and, you know, digital engagement to make you like have fun with the brand manager. Ugh, bleh. No. I didn't want to do those things anymore. And I didn't, you know, I had friends who were taking design jobs at Walmart or Amazon. And I was like, oh, I don't want those jobs. Yes, they pay very nicely, but I just don't want to work in that way anymore. So what do I want to do? I don't know. I started looking around for workforce development programs, and a really fantastic one is here in Los Angeles called LACY. It's the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator. And LACY does these 8-week workforce development programs. I signed up for the one that happened to be happening. And you get like a $2,000 a month stipend. And you get free breakfast and free lunch every day. And at the end of it, they offer like certification in whatever domain they're teaching for that particular cohort. The one that I did was building energy management systems, which is a mouthful to say that air conditioning is really bad for the environment. And
Don't say that. I live in Palm Springs and we're hitting 100.
yes, yes. Okay. So you would have found this one really fascinating. So air conditioning is one of the biggest problems in climate because we no longer even design houses in a way that's appropriate to their environment. We used to have like, if you lived in New Orleans, your house was up on stilts to accommodate flooding. And if you lived in New England, you had shutters to help you with the cold winters. And if you lived on the beach in Florida, you had storm windows. Now everything is a ticky-tacky slap together, you know, stucco bullshit. Sorry, oops. And everything looks the same. And we overcompensate for the fact that that building doesn't belong in that environment by just giving everybody air conditioning so that they can fix the internal environment. But what often happens is the air conditioning is sometimes heating and cooling a building at the same time in one area or one room because there's a draft in this room because the door doesn't shut all the way and this window is always open, and it's just so inefficient. So we're wasting energy keeping our personal temperatures just so in every place that we are, in our little bubble of our car, or our little bubble of our house, instead of building things in a way that stay cool. Like if you're living in Palm Springs, you should be in an adobe structure. They did it for thousands of years.
I know. I'm all for it. Try to find one.
So anyway, back to LACY though. LACY, the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, has a fantastic program for workforce development. Now you're a little bit far away and this is an in-person program.
Well, I can get to LA, so
Okay.
that would be
Yeah.
always doable.
So they have a really great program. It's paid, not a lot, but it pays, and they feed you and you get certified. And it was great networking, and it set me up for an internship. You know, here I am, prior CEO of my own company. Now I'm taking an internship, but an internship with an organization called Slate Z, which was an acronym for the South Los Angeles Transit Empowerment Zone. And they needed research on what climate resilient streets were. And I was like, ooh, this will allow me to put my user research skills to good use. So I was able to conduct some primary research with people involved in land trusts, people involved with the Transit Authority, LAUSD, and I got to do a bunch of research, desk research and primary research, and put together a proposal of different paths the city of LA can take to make climate resilient streets more common, especially in South Los Angeles. And I got to present that to the city of Los Angeles. And then while that program was winding down, I heard about this other program, the California Climate Action Corps, which up until last week was a program of AmeriCorps. And through Climate Action Corps, I was placed at Seeds of Hope. And now at Seeds of Hope, I'm helping them with everything from writing their grant applications to Rachel and I recently created an entire food sustainability track at for LA Climate Week. So I'm using my conference organizing skills, I'm using my public speaking skills, I'm using my volunteer management skills, I'm using my grant writing skills, all of the things that I have done in my career around design, and also designing the experience at food distributions. We had one food distribution that had been going since the pandemic, and we got the food and then we took a bunch of plastic bags and we bagged everything up into the plastic bags and we had people line up and each person got a bag. And I was like, oh, no, thank you. This is awful. The problem with this, and going back to my problem statement, the problem with that style of distribution was all of the people in our population that we were serving had no choice or dignity. Like, it feels yucky to just hand a bag. It's like, oh, you're poor. Here's your bag of food, poor person, bye. Nobody likes that. So I was thinking, all right, if the problem is that they don't have any dignity and choice over their food, the negative impact of that is that they are actually going to waste a lot of the food that we're giving. Here, we're trying to keep it out of landfill. Instead of going into the landfill from the depot, it's going to go to landfill from their own trash can at home. So that allowed us to rethink the distribution. This is the one at St. Barnabas. For anybody who's ever gone to that food distribution, we completely changed it. So now when you walk up, instead of getting a bag of plastic, you're encouraged to bring your own bag, and then we load it up for you based on what you choose to take. And you can take as much or a little as you'll actually use. So the outcome is that people have more personal choice and dignity, but we're also keeping more food out of landfill. And we've also, a byproduct of this is minimized our single-use plastic bag use by quite a bit, because we used to have to buy those and we went through like boxes of them a day, and now we just don't even buy them. So I'm still using these same sort of problem framing skills and design skills, but instead of designing the way a person is going to interact with something on their screen, I'm dealing with the way a person is interacting with an actual experience in the real world. And the impact of that is so much more rewarding. Almost an inverse relationship to how much it pays.
Yes, I can see that. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll connect with you, talk more. And I know Casey probably wants to go or has to go.
Yeah.
I have so many questions for you, but
Sure.
I'll be here. Maybe I'll come to a climate designers event. Sneak them in.
Oh, you absolutely should. In fact, Rachel just very helpfully shared the link to the upcoming food event. So this is basically a redux of the conference within a conference that we created for LA Climate Week. We did 21. Talk about like using all of your soft skills. Rachel and I put together like 21 talks. We had 36 speakers, 63% of them were women. We had a 5-day experience with all 5 days having free coffee with oat milk and free vegan lunch, 0 waste, no single-use plastic, like everything, every element of this was really considered. And now we're going to get everybody who was at this event, all of the farmers and the policy workers and the food justice warriors, back together for a meeting of the minds and figure out like what did we get right and what can we do better for next time.
Very cool. I think Rachel knows my name from emails. I was actually asked. I also I'm part of a co-chair of the food committee for the Climate Reality Project in LA. but
That's
I just joined as a co-chair. So I was like throwing him like, do you want to do this? I'm like, I can't come to LA right now, and I don't know, I wouldn't even know what to talk about. So next year, I'll
But
be-
you know, that kind of invite, like, you know, you probably have a really strong network, it sounds like, and getting those kinds of invites is exactly how you find the path that's going to take you to the next role.
yeah.
So if you're getting invited to co-chair that, I'd say take it.
Well, I am the co-chair, so that's new.
Oh,
But
okay.
the invite to help, you know, Rachel and the team there was like too new. That's too much. I'm like, I'm not ready. I just did this, and you know, and I couldn't travel on top of that. That was another thing. But I was like, you know, if it was 2 months earlier, like as in like I started 2 months earlier as a coach, I probably would have been much better prepared. Like now I feel good now. I'm like, yeah, I could do that. And this is like what, a little over a month later. So but
Well, I mean,
too
the
close.
food justice work that's necessary in Los Angeles, LA is kind of a beast
Yeah.
because getting food to some of the places, you have to drive through the city to get it there. So, you know, food hubs, food pantries, that's all fine and good, but like we need long-term solutions um, to this problem.
Yeah.
And a lot of the real change is only going to happen when every single person has this aha moment of how their food habits contribute to our climate reality and our worsening climate. So yeah, it's quite a big thing to try to consider how we reimagine our LA food systems. So
Yeah.
thank you for being on that. That's a big worthy problem to tackle.
It is. It is. It's also like so I'm, as I said, I'm in Palm Springs, and I'm learning about our food system. We have a lot of local farming, right? I've actually learned that most of what is grown here doesn't actually make it into the Coachella Valley. The
Really?
vast majority doesn't even get distributed here, and there's a lot. I talked to like one of the commercial farmers, and he was telling us that there's a lot of food waste that they have because it's too expensive for them to harvest it because they don't get enough, you know, like they don't get paid enough for the produce, so they let it literally rot on the field, rot on the trees. And so I'm currently trying to figure out, you know, working with some of the local organizations, can we do volunteer events and just get people out there and harvest it to give it to the food banks, you know. So that's something I'm kind of trying to figure out what's possible. But yeah, it's LA is crazy. Coachella Valley is much smaller, but it's equally crazy, and it's surprising that we have that in the state that actually has so much farming. We have so much food waste, but also so many people that are food insecure.
Yeah. It's so paradoxical and
Mhm.
frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think somebody described it as like, imagine going to the grocery store and buying 3 bags of groceries and then just walking into the parking lot and dumping one out and letting it rot on the asphalt. That's pretty much what we do.
Yep.
Because it rots in the fields, it rots at the depots, it rots in our own houses. We
Mhm.
buy too much and then we don't cook it. We're all part of the problem.
Yes.
Even me. Still me. It's still me. I'm the problem. It's me. All right.
Well,
Well,
everyone, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead, Casey.
I was just gonna say we're just a little bit over time here.
Okay.
But
Yeah. Thank you guys for a really interesting conversation. I hope to see you next week at the event. It's going to be a fun night. And just, it's always nice to be around other people who care. Let's at least have community with each other because it's a lot of work that we got to do.
Thank you so much, Angel.
Thank you so much, Casey. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you for good discussion too, everybody. All
I
right.
feel like the universe brought you here to answer my questions.
Happy to connect if anybody wants to reach out on LinkedIn later. I don't always check LinkedIn these days, so bear with me if I don't reply right away. But I
You don't
will.
like LinkedIn? Come on.
What's that?
You don't like LinkedIn?
It's
So,
not that I don't like it. I just don't look at it very often anymore. Okay, have a beautiful night, everybody.
You
Bye.
too.
thank you so
Bye.
much. See everybody.
Bye.